Charles Schwab ran the biggest steel operation in America. Andrew Carnegie's old protege, the first president of U.S. Steel, and one of his mills was limping. The manager had tried everything. He'd coaxed the men, pushed them, sworn at them, threatened them with the sack, and the mill still came in under quota every single day. Schwab showed up at the end of a shift, just as the day crew was clocking out. He asked the manager for a piece of chalk. Then he turned to the nearest worker and asked one question. "How many heats did your shift turn out today?" "6, the man said. Schwab didn't lecture anybody. He bent down, chalked a big number 6 on the floor, and walked out. The night shift came in, saw the 6, and asked what it meant. The day shift's record, they were told. The big boss came through and wrote it down. The next morning, the 6 was gone. In its place, the night shift had scrolled a 7. The day shift showed up, saw the 7, and took it personally. So when they finished, they left behind a swaggering 10. Within a short while, that limping mill was outproducing every other mill in the plant. Nobody got a raise. Nobody got threatened. Schwab had simply handed grown men a game and the chance to win it. As he put it, the way to get things done is to light up the desire to excel. This stretch of the book quietly gives up on logic. The 4 moves left in this section don't argue with anyone's reasoning. They reach underneath it, to how a decision makes a person feel about themselves. Get that part right, and the other person doesn't just agree with you. They want to. There's a sentence that can take the heat out of almost anyone. "I don't blame you a bit. If I were you, I'd feel exactly the same." And the strange thing is, you can say it and mean it, because if you really had the other person's life, you would feel exactly the same. Carnegie learned this on the wrong end of it. He gave a radio talk once about Louisa May Alcott, and not thinking said she'd lived and written in Concord, New Hampshire. Alcott, of course, lived in Concord, Massachusetts. If he'd said it once, fine, he said it twice. The letters came down on him like hornets, and the sharpest was from a Boston society woman who'd grown up in Concord and was now in Philadelphia, and who wrote as though he'd called Miss Alcott a cannibal. He sat there drafting the reply he wanted to send, informing her that he might have botched his geography, but she'd botched her manners. And then he stopped, because he knew any fool could do that. So he tried the opposite. Next time he was in Philadelphia, he telephoned her, and instead of defending himself, he agreed with her. Completely. "'Twas a stupid mistake," he said. He was mortified. He'd apologized on air and wanted to apologize to her in person. And something melted. She started apologizing to him. She said she'd lost her temper and was ashamed of the letter. That she admired how he'd taken her criticism. That she'd like to know him better. He'd done nothing but grant her fully the right to be upset. And here's why it costs you nothing to mean a thing like that. Whoever you are, the only reason you're not the furious stranger on the other end of the line is that you didn't inherit their temperament, their parents, their particular run of luck. Take the worst person you can name. Al Capone. Say, give yourself his exact body and upbringing and every last experience, and you'd have ended up precisely where he did. You deserve very little credit for being who you are. Which means the unreasonable, prickly, difficult people who come at you deserve a little less blame and a little more pity than your first instinct wants to hand them. People aren't starving for your agreement. Most of them are starving for a little sympathy, and the one who finally gives it gets everything. There's a line usually put in the mouth of the banker J.P. Morgan. A man generally has 2 reasons for doing a thing. The real one, and the one that sounds good. You don't have to dig out the real one. He's already got that. What you offer him is the one that sounds good, a reason he can feel proud of. The British press baron Lord Northcliffe once wanted a newspaper to stop running a photo of him he hated. He didn't write the editor, "Take down that picture, I don't like it." He wrote, "Please stop running that picture. My mother doesn't like it." Try arguing with a man's mother. It even works on people you're sure are out to cheat you. An auto company had 6 customers refusing to pay their service bills, each disputing one charge, each having signed for the work. The credit department went in hard. "You signed, you're wrong. We know cars better than you. Pay up." They got 6 arguments and no money. So a man named James Thomas was sent in to try the opposite. He didn't mention the bill. He told each customer he'd come to find out what the company had done wrong, that the firm made no claim to being perfect, and that the customer knew his own car better than anyone alive. He listened. And then he handed the man his own bill and said, in effect, "You're a fair person. You go ahead and adjust this however you think is right. Whatever you decide, that's what stands." 5 of the 6 paid every penny, and within 2 years, all 6 bought new cars. He hadn't out-argued a soul. He'd simply decided out loud to treat each man as honest, and people have a way of becoming the thing you visibly trust them to be. Give a person a reason that flatters who they want to be, and they'll climb to meet it. Here's the third move. A fact you say is forgotten. A fact you stage gets felt. A market researcher named Boynton had to deliver a report on cold cream to one of the toughest ad men in the business. The first meeting was a disaster. They fell into an argument about his research methods, the clock ran out, and he left with nothing. So he came back a second time and didn't bring a single sheet of figures. While the man was on the phone, Boynton opened a suitcase and dumped 32 jars of cold cream onto the desk, every competing brand the man knew, and on each jar a tag spelling out what the research had found about it. The arguing simply stopped. The man hung up, picked up one jar, then another, reading the tags. 10 minutes he'd grudgingly offered turned into a full hour, and the order was his. Same facts as the first meeting. He just made them something you could pick up in your hand. You can do it with almost nothing. A cash register salesman walked into a grocery, told the owner his ancient registers were leaking money on every sale, and threw a fistful of pennies clattering across the floor. The words alone hadn't moved him. The sound did. He bought new machines. Schwab's chalk worked on a whole crew. The same move works on one person, and it's the strongest in the book, because nothing pulls at a capable person like being dared. When Al Smith was governor of New York, Sing Sing prison was a running scandal that no one would touch. Wardens had come and gone, one of them lasting 3 weeks. It was the kind of post that ended careers, and everyone knew it. Smith called in a man named Louis Laws, and Laws wavered, because he had a future to protect and Sing Sing had already swallowed better men. Smith couldn't sell him the job. The job was indefensible. So instead he looked at Laws hesitating and said, more or less, "I don't blame you for being scared. It's a tough spot. It'll take a big person to go up there and last." That was all it took. Laws went. He stayed 20 years, became the most famous prison warden in America, and wrote a book about it that sold by the hundreds of thousands. Why does a dare beat a raise? Because as the psychologist Frederick Herzberg found decades later, the thing that truly drives people at work isn't the pay or the perks at all. Those just keep them from quitting. What lights them up is the work itself, the chance to prove something, to do a hard thing well. The tire magnate Harvey Firestone said money never once held the good people. It was the game that held them. Give a capable person a mountain, and the quiet suggestion that they might be the one who can climb it, and you won't have to push. Sympathy, a reason to be proud of, a fact you can hold, a dare worth taking. Not one of them argues. Each one simply hands the other person a version of themselves they'd like to be: understood, honorable, impressed, victorious, and then steps back and lets them play it. That's what it really means to let it be their idea. You don't supply the logic, you supply the feeling, and you let them supply the reason. And because the pride in the decision belongs to them, the decision does too, which is exactly why it sticks. You were never really trying to win the point. You were trying to make winning it feel like their own idea. And once it does, they'll carry it further than you ever could have pushed it. Everything so far has assumed the other person was, underneath it all, already on your side. The last part of the book is harder. It's about the moment you have to tell someone they've actually done something wrong. An employee, a child, a friend, and somehow come out the other side without making an enemy. It's the most delicate thing one person can do to another, and the book hands it to you the way a great leader does it, less like a judge and more like a surgeon. One clean cut, no wound left behind. Next time, the leader's scalpel.